Hey, it's your CEO, Weekend Gabe, and thanks for watching Weekend at Gabe's. We hope that you enjoy this latest episode. While you're here, hit the subscribe button and follow us on YouTube. Thanks for watching. All right, you're checking out Weekend at Gabe's, and we haven't done this in a long time, so I am so glad to bring back this segment, Meet Gabe, where we talk to some of the best Gabes in the world. We talked to Gabe Ramirez from B96. We talked to Gabe, who is a professional skateboarder here in Chicago. And now we're going to talk with Gabe Mollica, who has a performance show off Broadway in New York, and it just finished up in LA. And he's here to join and talk with us here on Weekend at Gabe's. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm living the dream. I love this segment. This is right up my alley. Love all Gabes. I support, and I a good lineage. A skateboarder, people from the radio. These are type people with the name Gabe. I like it.
Yeah, we had I think it was a 16 or 15-year-old skateboarder. I forget his name, but he is insanely dope. He's out there like treading on all types of shit and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. He was our youngest guest so far, and his dad was like, "Why do you want to talk to my son?" I'm like, "Cause he's dope." So it was really fun. But you're a dope guest as well. So I don't want to take away from from the great things that you're doing. Solo, a show about friendship, has been absolutely killing it. You guys just had an extension in New York, and you just wrapped up some time that you guys did in Los Angeles last week in January 2023, whenever you're watching this. So let's talk a little bit about that. We'll start there. I wanted to talk about just being gay, but let's get into Solo. Your evaluation and self-reflection of being a 30-year-old and not having any real friends. That's hardcore. That's hardcore.
Yeah. I opened the show by being like, I don't have friends, and then I'm like, I do have bros. So I make a distinction between like having friends and having bros.
Yeah.
And basically, like, the whole show started because my mom asked me, like, I have this oldest bro, and my mom asked me, it's like, oh, Nick's sister's gonna have a baby. How does Nick feel about being an uncle? And I was like, I have no idea how Nick feels about being an uncle. Like, that's not the kind of thing that guys talk about.
Sure.
And from there, I was like, do I not know anything about my friends? And so then like the whole kind of hour, it's like 75 minutes, jokes and stories kind of starts. And truth be told, like do you know like Mike Birbiglia, Hassan Minaj, those kind of guys?
Absolutely.
So I'm a big fan of those guys. And when I started comedy, I knew I wanted to do solo shows. So like a long theatrical kind of thing. And I've been working on this thing like throughout my 20s basically. And then I figured out like the way in, which is like that question of like, what are friends? Like, what does it mean to have friends? And once I found that, all the stories that I already had about my friends started to like click. And it's been going really well, man. We've gotten really good newspaper reviews. I just brought it back. We brought it to LA and we sold out a couple shows, which was like really tight. We're just trying to get like, you know, we need a couple lucky breaks, you know, trying to get on late night, trying to get on daytime TV. You need a couple of those things.
Yeah.
But we feel like it's close. We feel like the show is like really connecting with people and there's something for everybody.
You know, Chicago has a huge theater district. I'm not sure if you're familiar. So I think it would be really fantastic if, whenever your run in New York is done, maybe you might be able to find a space.
Man.
Maybe
we're looking
at
Chicago, DC. I'm wearing my friend, you know, Colt Cabana, the wrestler?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
He's a friend of mine.
Oh, phenomenal.
Yeah, we lived together at the Edinburgh Fringe a couple years ago, and I'm wearing his hoodie right now. And, I was going to do the show in Chicago and in November, and I was going to stay with him, actually. And he then we got extended in New York. I was like, sorry, man, like, I got to stay. It's going really well. So hopefully I'll bring it to Chicago, and we'll have Colt Cabana.
Love it, man. That'd be phenomenal.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, so I was watching an old stand-up, or no, the something you did for the Moth Hour, radio hour,
years ago.
And it was about you joining the varsity football team, right?
Or quitting the varsity football.
Which is funny because I was on my high school football team for 2 days.
Yeah, man, me too.
I showed up for one practice. I was quarterback, which I did not want to be, but my brother, who was a quarterback in high school, had convinced me that he could like coach me to be a quarterback. But I'm not sure if you know of any like 5'8" Hispanic college football stars in the world. So I don't think the outcome wasn't going to be, everlasting.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to be a running back. But anyways, first day of high school football, they're just teaching you how to like take a snap and hand off, which I had some understanding of how to do. But I fumbled the ball, which they tell you like just jump on the ball. And this is one of those moments you find out that you can't outrun an entire football team. And I decided to pick up and run with the ball, which was the worst decision, and also which led to me not coming back after day 2.
Wow, yeah, man. I have a lot of. I mean, they put me on the line, and I just like did not like to get hit. Like,
Right.
It sucks. I was like, and like when you play other sports, like if you play basketball, you get to like hold the basketball and shoot the basketball and pass the basketball. But if you play football and you're big, you just like push people, and that sucks. Like they should call it pushing people. They should not like the football and the quarterback and the center all have very different jobs.
Sure. Yeah. So in your telling of that story is where you landed up on the marching band, where you talk about like how you were able to meet people and sort of gravitate towards them, which ironically sort of brought you back into the football picture. I think it was like a homecoming where you were performing as a band. But like it seems like you've had people sprinkled throughout your life. But I think this stage demonstration just sort of an evaluation of you not having sort of those long-term relationships throughout your life, or really having someone in your pocket to be there when you really needed it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the thing that kind of I talk about in the show is really it's like my mom got sick this year and she's feeling a lot better, but she was sick for a little while, and I have the bros in my life like didn't know how to handle it, like they didn't know how to help. And they kind of like fucked up in like a kind of charming way, but like it still like upset me. I was like, oh, I don't have anybody in my life who like knows what to do when things go bad. And so using that like idea of like, wait, do I not have anybody? I kind of go back into like I did have a best friend in college, and he was kind of like my soulmate. Just like we lived together, we did everything together, and then we have this falling out, and there's like a betrayal involved, and so I kind of just tell that story. That's like a 40-minute story of like how all that happens. And so we open with me being like, what if I don't have friends? Then me being like, oh, actually I did have a friend and it went really poorly. And then at the end, I kind of like reevaluate what it means to be friends in your 30s. So that's kind of like the structure of it. Because like, yeah, like casually I feel close to people. Sure. Like I do a lot of different things. I have a lot of different interests. I feel like I can talk to a lot of different people, but it's like having people that are really, really connected to you and understand all the different parts of you. I was like, oh, I don't know if I have that as a dude. And so I kind of just like poke and prod at it. I don't know if I have like a solution. Like I'm not like a friendship influencer. I'm not like, I'm not like go to bingo and like you'll meet bro. Like I don't really have like answers. I'm more just like, this was a problem that I noticed in my life about friendship. And I really studied friendship. Like I met with a college professor who studies friendship. There's like a big thing about how like a lot of guy friendship is shoulder to shoulder. So it's like you're next to each other and there's fantasy football or there's video games or there's whatever. But for females, friendship a lot of times, in my experience, it's very eye to eye, face to face friendship, where they sit down and they like talk to each other about their problems. Where like that's not really a thing that, in my life, that the guys do.
Yeah.
And so I tried to like understand friendship on this kind of like elemental level, and then like make jokes about it and tell stories about it. So that's kind of like how it came together. But the people I consider my friends in real life have come to the show, and they're like, oh, we get it. When you say you don't have friends, like we're like, oh, what do you mean? And then you explain, and they're like, oh no, that's us. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, but that's such a tough thing, because I imagine like you're not married, so you don't have like a partner or a co-pilot, someone who's just gonna always be there. And so I guess I would never kind of understand that, being that my wife and I have been together for 20 years. So
wow. When'd you guys meet?
This year will be our 20th anniversary of us since we started dating. Last year we celebrated 10 years of marriage.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I've always had somebody. So I kind of feel
Yeah.
like whenever I hear people talk, like the way you talk about a friendship is sort of the same way that when people talk about like dating in this decade of like just how trash it is. And I'm like, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that. So going through my
No,
30s, I'm
no,
so glad I had somebody with me. You
no.
know,
You're
that's
totally right. You're totally right. When I talk about the show, I really kind of think about it like a rom com, but with two straight dudes. Like that's kind of like the arc. Oh, excuse me. That's kind of like the arc of the show.
yeah. So how do you? No, so now moving through, like sort of the conclusion of the show, like how do you self evaluate how you're doing with developing relationships or creating relationships that are meaningful? Like does that sort of help you explore? Meeting new people because, like you said, you're well versed, you're conversational, you know a lot, so that should be helpful to get you into spaces to meet people and sort of do that. Or is that still a challenge?
For me, it's less about meeting new people and more about um, trying to get closer to the people that I do have already in my life, and like
Sure.
being a little bit more intentional about the conversations that we have, that they're not just
Yeah.
surface level. So just like calling
Yeah.
calling the guys every once in a while, just like I feel like we never call, and it's a thing I'm
Yeah.
trying to do more. Where it's like, especially if I'm in the car, I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna be on the road for the next 2 hours. Give me a call. Like we'll just catch up.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's like a tangible thing that men can do to just call your bros, and like maybe you'll talk about something serious. You don't have to, but it's probably more likely than just like the texting all day. Um, yeah, that's a big one. And the other thing is like the show's about the guys not knowing what to do when my mom got sick, and a part of it is just like when you need something from people, just like telling them what you need. Like men love instructions in my like just like tell
Yeah.
me what you need. Like don't for me or me to them, just like hey man, I don't need you to solve my mom's medical issue. I just need you to ask me if I'm good.
Sure. Yeah.
um,
I always struggle with that when people say like like someone important has passed or someone's sick, and it just like kind of like I want to be of assistance to you, but I'm also not the type to just like I'm coming over and I'm gonna drop off dinner for you so that you don't have to worry about that. Like
yeah,
I don't operate. Your sort of assessment is spot on. That I need to be told. Like I'm always like, if you need anything, let me know, and no one ever says I need this.
yeah,
but maybe it's to your point, like maybe you just need someone to say, hey, if I need anything, I know that you're there. But even though I don't
yeah.
need anything right now, but I'm glad that you make that offer.
Sure. And if you're feeling like, oh, my friends aren't doing what I want them to be doing, like you can just tell them, like they're stupid. Like at least my friends, like just like tell them you need a little, like, like it took me like because we have this thing where we want the other person to. You're married, you probably know this. You want the other person to just like know what you're thinking, and that'll just never work. You kind of just like have to say what you need and what you want. And if you can do that, in my limited experience, I do think your friendships will be enhanced because there's a clarity in like what you need from them.
Yeah, but there's also like when I think of friendships, I'm always really reserved about calling people friends. So like
Oh, sure.
there's people I've meet through the show, and that I'm like I could chat with through social media. We don't have each other's numbers, but I'm like comfortable in saying like I know who they are. But
Yeah.
I won't go to that extreme of saying like they're my friend, because that to me is like a different level of like an intimacy in our relationship that is, like I said, is beyond surface level. And so
Mm,
I do only have a handful of people I would sort of label friends, that I
yeah.
know that if shit really hit the fan, that I can call on them and they would be able to like like, hey, I could put this much money in your bank account. Hey, I could be there to help you with your water pipes that burst or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's only a handful of people. And I agree with you, sort of just having those those long conversations while you're driving, you're just in the car, where you otherwise wouldn't have time. That's a great way to sort of catch up and find out what they're going through, because they may be experiencing some shit that they just want you to just be a sounding board for.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I think everyone wants to feel like like nobody wants to be a bad friend. Everyone wants to be a good friend, and I think
Right.
one way to do that is a lot of times it's just listening. I do a bit in the show about how like men sometimes instead of listening to a problem and internalizing it and thinking about it and then reacting, we just immediately try to solve it.
Yeah.
And I know that that's a problem because I date women and they tell me that that's what we do. And so I've noticed that a lot. And I think that's not a bad impulse. Like sometimes, if you're a fireman, like you should run into a building and solve the problem. But sometimes you just want somebody to listen, just be that sounding board, just like dick around a little bit on the phone, talk about what's going on. They don't need to solve it. It can be left unresolved. It's not like it's not a crime we're trying to solve. We're just kind of like airing out the issue, and that's tough for us, I think, sometimes.
But I work in that capacity of when someone says like I can't figure this out, and now I'm just like I gotta figure this out
Of
because
course, of
they don't
course.
know how to do it, and I feel like I can figure this out. And it's the same thing with relationships or or domestic issues or something. You're like, this is not gonna ever work, and you're like, I'm determined to make this work, just to say like
Mhm.
I made it work. And
Yeah,
so I do operate in that function as well, sadly.
totally. No, I think we all do it. We're all guilty of that for sure.
Yeah. But what was the kind of what, like you said you started writing this in your 20s, but what was like the spark that said, like this is something that it needs to be almost like a form of therapy because it
Yeah,
feels
it's
like it.
therapeutic. It's definitely therapeutic. I don't know if it's necessarily like I think everyone should go to therapy instead, you know? Um, but so I saw Mike Birbiglia's Girlfriend's Boyfriend on Netflix in like 2013 maybe, and it's still my favorite special. Like it just kind of like changed my life. I was like, "Oh, I can do that." Like that's something that I could figure out. And because it's storytelling and jokes and it's very romantic and it just like I remember watching it with somebody I was dating and being like, "Oh, I need to do that like immediately."
Mm,
And it basically took me 10 years of writing and doing my open mics and the Edinburgh Fringe Festival to like make it off Broadway basically.
sure.
But it's basically been the only goal I've had for all of my 20s. And then this story in particular, it's like when you have a falling out with a best friend, it was like a big breakup for me, but like a friend
Yeah.
breakup. And I kind of knew as soon as it happened, because I started comedy right afterwards, that, oh, this is kind of my origin story. Like, this is me getting bit by the spider. This is me, like, realizing I'm an X-Man. Like, there was something like, you get your heart broken, you do comedy. It's like Miss Marvelous Mrs. Maisel kind of deal, where it's like, my
Mm,
husband left me and I started comedy. Like, this was kind of like that. And so I kind of always knew that that main story was going to be in there. And then it wasn't until I turned 30 and lived a little bit more life and had this kind of realization about friendship that the show kind of came together. Because a lot of it is like, oh, the main story of the show happened when I was 22. And there's a part of me that's like, who cares? You were a child. And now, once I had the lens of like, oh, I'm 30 and have no friends, quote unquote, um, it all kind of I look through it now as a 30-year-old and it just feels different and it feels a little bit more mature. And listen, like I'm not famous and I'm not a millionaire, but people are responding really well. Like
yeah.
it's been going really well.
How did the preparation of like going to stand-up comedy, doing storytelling, how did that prepare you to be on stage to deliver this experience of yours? I have to imagine. I mean, I know it's part of the experience in itself, but it feels like it was you going through the experience was gearing you up for this next experience of talking about what had happened.
Totally. It's like you need life experience, one, and then you need like years and years of like when you say stand up and storytelling, for me those are different muscles. Like
Mm,
storytelling is like cardio, where it's like long term. Like you're like it's this long narrative and I'm running and I'm figuring it out. Where like joke telling is like lifting weights, where it's like high intensity, up, short sentences, jokey, 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 jokey. And a great solo show is kind of both of them. It's
yeah.
like you're running this marathon that's like really beautifully crafted and like, oh, there's references to this thing that's earlier and it's really carefully done, but also you have like hard jokes, people laughing, people losing their minds at such and such an idea. So it's the life experience part you need, of course, but once you have the life experience, like a lot of people have experienced what I've experienced and not turned into a solo show because they didn't spend their 20s focusing on the cardio and weightlifting of comedy and storytelling. So
Yeah.
I just kind of took that experience and then like just started writing and doing mics and storytelling shows and, you know, hundreds, if not almost 1,000 shows at this point. So you get better and you kind of figure out how it works.
Do you feel comfortable being alone? Like, is that being that you don't have, like you said, you're talking to, like, yeah, I have people around me, but it's kind of, it's not where I really want it to be.
Yeah.
I'm a person who I'm comfortable being alone, but I don't want to be left alone, if that makes any sense.
Totally, totally. I like being alone. I like being alone, but I don't like feeling lonely. I think
Sure.
that's a big distinction. I think you're exactly right because like I love my alone time. I couldn't have done the show without it. You know, spending time by yourself, writing, watching stuff, taking notes, marking up scripts. Like, you know, I did that for years. And also, yeah, like it gets to the weekend, and if I don't, it's Friday and I don't have plans. Like I'm probably gonna feel crummy, like everybody
Right.
else.
Right.
Um, yeah, I definitely seek that out.
But is there a comfort to that? Because like I have two children, I have a wife, but also my boys are mom boys, so everything that they do, they want to do, and what I do is like it's shit. So it's like they don't like the movies I like, they don't like the music I like, so I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go upstairs and watch this, and I'll be left alone for hours,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
but I still have like this. Well, let me go check in on them, and then we'll grab lunch. But
yeah, yeah.
then it could be like me back to being 2 hours alone by myself. But it's fine.
No, totally. Like if we do a weekend or something, and I see people for a long time, like I'm gonna need a couple hours alone to reset. I feel that in a big way. Um, oh, that's interesting. Like I feel like with my like bros, like the thing that does unite us for the most part is a similar taste in movies and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Every once in a while, there's some tension over like, oh, what are we gonna watch? Um, but yeah, there's nothing worse than being in a group and you're watching something. You're like, this stinks. We should be doing something else. I'm the
Right.
worst.
Just awful. Talk a little bit about like where did you grow up in? Like because I know you're in Queens right now, right? So is that New York your home?
Yeah, I live in Astoria now, Astoria, Queens, but I grew up on Long Island, in the suburbs, and yeah, I think I was the only Gabe in school for years. I don't think I graduated with any other Gabes. And then in college, there was another Gabe who joined the choir I was in, and I remember being like, "Oh, who's this guy? Like another Gabe in the choir? Like I did not like that at all."
Right.
And he ended up being cool. Like I liked him a lot, but I do remember feeling territorial about that.
Yeah, I have the biggest problem calling other people Gabe, like even though that's their name, but it's just like
Yeah,
it's so weird for me.
so
Um,
weird.
and so like were you an only sibling? Like what did you have other siblings? Where did you fall into the youngest, oldest, middle? Where do you fall as
Yeah,
far
I
as
have
that?
one sister who's 17 months younger than I am. And so we're almost twins. Like we're like pretty close in age and like one grade below me. And she writes comedy also. Um, and she's been pretty successful in that. And we grew up doing like theater together, and I played sports and stuff like that. So I talk about it in the show that I was kind of like the way I describe it is like I was too straight for the gay kids and too gay for the straight kids. I was in the middle, and so I talk about that in the show a lot. Um, just kind of like being stuck between worlds,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was. Yeah, I had a pretty good childhood, all things considered. I'm actually at my parents' house right now because I just got back from LA and they live near the airport. So I decided to do a day with them, and
Right.
then when my show comes back tomorrow, so I'll head back to Queens
What
and get ready for that.
what has been the response from the family as far because I don't know were they aware that you were going through this, or is this kind of new for them to experience as it is for everyone else who's watching it?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. My mom wishes she could come every night. And I'm like, you can't come every night. Like we do the show a lot. Like you can't. It's insane. Um, but yeah, I think like it's funny to like watch them. It's funny. At a certain point, they stop watching me, and they're more like watching the audience watch me, and like they kind of can't believe that people keep showing up. They're like, because like we've had a couple with like over 100 people there, and they're like, we don't know any of these people. Like, are you famous? I'm like, I'm not famous, but people are coming to the show. Yeah, it's been fun to watch them because like a couple of stories, like I get in trouble or I embarrass myself or I get drunk or like whatever, and it's funny to like they've seen me tell those stories to like 8 people. So now that it's like going well in a theater, it like feels less bad, I guess.
Sure, exactly. So one of the things that we were talking in before we went live was that we both work in schools. I don't know if you're like directly a teacher, but like are the kids aware of what's happening to you outside of school? Are they aware of this secondary career, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a college advisor for about 20 kids, and I run the writing center at a high school. So I don't really discipline; I kind of just like help.
Yeah,
Or I don't even give grades. Like I really am just there to like help them get into college. So the kids who are like my direct students who I help with like college essays and stuff like that, they definitely notice because I haven't been in the building very much this last month. So, like they know, and they're like looking for me and being like, "What the hell?" But for the most part, they're like pretty supportive and pretty cool, and like, I think it's nice to have an understanding where it's like I will help you, but also like I got this other thing that I'm trying to get done. But I've worked in schools since I was 22 years old. Like I've never started September and not been in a school for my entire life.
yeah.
So that's another change where it's like, oh, if this keeps taking off, like maybe I won't be going to school in the fall, and like that's very bizarre.
Exactly.
So yeah, but the kids are supportive. They're pretty cool.
So this is my first year working. I worked in our school district for a decade, but this is my first year inside of a school, and I am scared to death of the kids deciding to go down and find all the work that I've done.
They
And
will find it. Yeah.
I hope not. I've shared it with some of my staff, my peers at the school, and they're really supportive and like they think it's really cool the stuff I do.
That's great.
But
Yeah.
but the kids one time were like, "Hey, we saw you on TikTok," and I was like, "That's impossible because I'm not on TikTok," which is a lie. But I was just seeing that they were like, "What did they find?" And they're like, oh yeah, you were disciplining kids, which I know it's not true at all. So, but I was shook for like a moment because I do have some content up there. But I was like, I don't want you guys like finding out because it's all branded Weekend Gabe. So
yeah.
if they just Google that, it's gonna unlock the whole the whole bounty. So I'm glad that they were just pulling my leg a little bit, but
No, I know that
I'm
feeling.
scared to death. Yeah, I'm scared to
Yeah,
death.
you don't want some kid to like bully you for like having dreams,
They're like, oh, look, you like to swear in your podcast, Mr. Mendoza. Yeah, so I hope that they, like Batman and Bruce Wayne, man. It's like just live these separate worlds, and hopefully
Yeah.
you'll never put it together.
Totally. At a certain point, I had to be like, if they find it, they find it, And for a while, I was lucky because when I started comedy, like started doing it seriously, like 2016, there wasn't as much of an emphasis on just like putting all your clips up. So I had like a few years where nobody was like taking a camera to an open mic, and I think that's really useful because I had some time to like try to get good before posting, because I think if I posted my first ever open mic online, it would, and the kids found it, like I was like, you should make fun of me. This is bad.
This is true. This is true. Yeah, we've had an artist who is a substitute teacher or something, like he's a teacher, and his kids are fully aware of what he does, and they grade his work and like they give him feedback.
Hilarious.
And I'm like, I don't want that kind of relationship with the kids. Like, nah, I don't need that. But before we get out of here, just sort of like get back to some of the growing up Gabe. Like you said you enjoyed it. It's a great name. The Gabes in the world. Shout out. What was like we talked about sort of the hearing of Gay and Gabe. What
Yes.
else? What else have you had to run in through? I've had people call me Gaby or Gabby, which is yeah, it's hit or miss on how I feel about that. Any other kind of like experiences with
Do
the
you ever
name
get
that
people
you're
to spell your name Gab?
Gab? Yep.
Yeah, I'm like,
I've had someone argue with me that my name was spelled incorrectly.
that's so funny. It should be Gab. And at summer camp one year, they called me our name backwards, which is E-Bag.
Yes, I am Uncle Bags to my nieces and nephew.
Hilarious. Yes.
I did, but then it's funny because they were like, "Oh, do you know DJ Khaled because of Bags?" But at the
Yeah.
time, everyone was getting Bags. They're like, "Do you know DJ Khaled?" Like, no, it's just Bags, Uncle Bags.
That's
So yeah, E Bags is cool. Like, or
yeah,
I just dropped the E and I said Bags. That's cool.
yeah, Bags is great. I like that. Yeah, I besides that, you get a substitute teacher and they would say Gabrielle and you'd have to go, yes, that's me. Uh, but besides that, like I feel like for the most part, there's not a ton of us, and so when you say Gabe to somebody, like they know who I'm talking about. Especially in comedy, there's Gabriel Iglesias, but he goes by Gabriel. So in terms of other Gabes, like it's kind of nice being like if you say Gabe in the New York comedy scene, people normally know who you're talking about, which is kind of fun.
That's funny. What about, have you had any issue finding a nameplate with your name on it? This is something that happens a lot. But then my co-host of the show, Sam, he went to, I think it was Disney World or Disneyland, and he found nothing but Gabe plates. And I was like, that is not the experience that I have at Great
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, I feel like it's like, Joe, Mike, Andrew, John, Jose. Like there's certain names that like you're gonna see. I feel like you'd go to a cool place with a name keychain, and if they had like secondary names, like Gabe was in there, it's a good test of whether a place is a good amusement park.
Definitely. He's like, you're lying. He's like, he's like, you're just making this up. He's like, they're all out here. I'm like, no, like it's not common all the time. It's not common. Man, Gabe, thanks so much for joining us. Solo is the off-Broadway show about friendships. You said it's your 6-week extension. You guys are starting up. Was it February 1st? Is that tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow we're back for another month, and then hopefully the goal is to tour it around the country.
Man, I would love to have it here in Chicago. So
you'll be the first to know, man.
And of course, if you live here for a month, you have to come over for dinner. So that's
man. I would love that. I would love that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Gabe Mollica, here on Weekend at Gabe for Meet Gabe. Thank you so much, and good luck with the show moving forward.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks for watching this latest episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you're looking for more, click on any of the episodes swirling around my head. And also, don't forget to follow us on the socials at Weekend Gabe, at Weekend at Gabe's, and also at The Real Sam Crane. All right. Thanks for watching, y'all.